All right, guys, it's Jahlon in the Paradox Gaming Network, and today we're talking about Ashes of Creation. Yesterday, Steven did his hour and a half worth of Ask Me Anything, so a lot of you have asked me to respond to it or draw out the big stuff. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to let Steven talk for each segment, and then I'm going to come back and I'm going to give some of my feedback on each of the topics. So without further ado, here's Steven.
How literal is this? Will there be rooms or partial floors that only this archetype can get to? What else can you tell us about this archetype? Yes, so we have what are called utility skills, and a lot of MMORPGs really only focus on active combat skills. The way we're implementing these utility skills, specifically as it relates to rogues, will be able to essentially discover hidden doors, or they'll be able to track find, the ranger will be able to track find, sorry. They'll be able to discover traps. They'll be able to discover additional treasures. So if you're in a party and you have a rogue that's available, they'll be able to use that utility skill to discover these random doors that might exist in a dungeon. Now, the way we make it so that it's not essentially the same door every time, and it's just a first time thing, and every time thereafter you know where that door's at, is these locations are randomly spawned throughout different times of the day. So they'll change essentially as you go into a dungeon at different times. So it'll be important and relevant for parties to make sure that they have a diversity of archetypes available to them, and in particular for the rogue's case, because they can find those hidden type doors and then have access to different types of loot tables based off of that.
So there's a lot here, and a lot of people wouldn't think that this is an important thing. However, one concern gamers always have is my class suddenly going to fall out of meta? Am I going to be excluded from certain content because my class just isn't good enough? Now, I don't think rogues are ever in that, that area where they think their DPS isn't going to be on par, so they're not going to get invites. But you heard Steven say all of the classes have these things. So maybe you find that a summoner doesn't have the same DPS potential as all the other damage dealers. So you start building your raid groups without any summoners. But then instead of Intrepid having to do a big rebalance on their new content, Intrepid could make it so only a summon can cross to a certain spot in a dungeon and open a door or trigger a trap or trigger a lever and deploy a bridge. The fact that Intrepid is taking the time to worry about these utility skills on top of the combat skills is definitely going to give them a lot of freedom as they go down the road to not have to constantly do the flavor of the month combat patch balancing. They can do a lot smaller tweaks and ensure all 8 archetypes have a spot in all the raid content.
Considering the number of nodes that are in the world, how many different dungeons and world bosses will there be? Is it going to be one dungeon per node, or will nodes share dungeons that will unlock when either of the associated nodes level to the appropriate tier? So considering that there's around 103 nodes that are present in the world, there's a significant portion of dungeons. They will, however, share locality because the initial zone of influence at a 0 stage node is relatively small. So nodes or dungeons are considered essentially these points of interest that exist between multiple nodes, and as nodes advance and expand, they're going to take over nearby nodes as well through our vassal system, locking them out from progressing further than the parent node, and that node is going to then have influence over that dungeon point of interest. The number of raid bosses that are present in the world at start. Obviously, we have a lot of expansions and additional content that's planned for post-launch. But initially, there's going to be between probably, I would say, 12 and 15 world raid bosses that are present, and that does not obviously include the dungeon bosses that will be present and the regional bosses that will be present too. The difference between dungeon bosses and regional bosses and raid bosses, legendary raid bosses, is essentially the amount of players that are necessary in order to complete that content, the difficulty level, as well as the drop tables that come along with those. So legendary equipment is only going to be droppable from legendary world bosses. The regional bosses, those can change based off of, and also legendary bosses are static. The regional bosses can change based off the progression of certain types of nodes and the location of those nodes as well.
So a really big thing here, I don't think everybody understood that there's not going to be 103 different dungeons. You might have one dungeon for, say, 6 nodes. So depending on how those nodes level up, that will determine the entrances to those dungeons. Also, if you guys aren't familiar with a fairly old quote when Intrepid used to do their live streams downstairs at their studio, the quote that they talk about is the raid bosses in these 40-person raids or even in the smaller ones, if there's no metropolis built on the server, then that boss is going to be weaker. When you get your first metropolis, that boss is going to get access to new abilities and skills. Are there now 5 metropolis? Now the boss gets even more things. Are the 5 metropolis varied? Are they all the same? Which one has 2? These are going to be the things that turn and tweak and twist the bosses so that no 2 servers are going to have the same dungeon encounters and the same raid encounters. Also keep in mind, depending on which nodes develop, that's going to be which pathways you find into the dungeon. So that's going to play a lot of shaping with which node is really benefiting from that new dungeon, because you're obviously going to stop by the node first before you swing into the dungeon. You might need to get gear, consumables. You might have to pick up somebody to plug in for a missing person. So yeah, that way that is going to play out. The fact that they plan on having 12 to 15 world bosses at launch, that's a pretty healthy number. And then the regional bosses, that's going to be something that we look into when we get into alpha and then beta, just to kind of see what sort of stuff we can be getting. And that's the motivation to be traveling from region to region, because you're going to want to be scoping out all those bosses and getting as much loot as you can.
Excuse me. Have you decided yet what happens to a player caravan if they are in the middle of a trip and have to log off or get DC'd? Can I try to make it halfway to my destination one night, find a safe area and log out, and then log in the next day to finish delivery? No. So there will be a time delay that starts ticking when the caravan logs off. And that time delay is probably going to be between 5 and 10 minutes. So essentially what's going to happen is, first of all, for the caravan specifically, if you are disconnected or log off, the caravan will persist in the world. So that's what's going to happen with the caravan. That will persist and exist still in the world.
So big thing here. I know a lot of people heard this and they got concerned. I fielded a lot of questions with this yesterday. I talked to Steven this morning because so many of the people who follow my 101 content, they are predominantly PvE players, or dare I say a little Care Bear player. Number one, I get it. If you get a random disconnect or you lose your internet, we all had that in ArcAge, and that really sucked. You get a disconnect. By the time you get logged back in, your hauler is gone. You lost all your packs. However, as an EVE Online player, I will tell you, it really sucked to be chasing a hauler through nullsec or through lowsec. And as soon as they get through a gate ahead of you, they just Alt F4 and they log off ski, and then they wait a couple hours to come back in. Talking to Steven today, what's going to happen with a personal caravan is that if you log off or you disconnect, your caravan is going to persist in the world for X amount of time. I don't want to talk numbers because I want to make sure that Intrepid has the freedom to do that testing. And then what's going to happen is after that set period of time, your caravan is going to be destroyed. Now, that is going to be something we have to give Intrepid feedback on, the time window, and does it work? And then if the caravan is destroyed, should it be totally destroyed or should it just drop its goods? The problem you get is people need to realize you need to plan your caravan from start to finish so you can get to your destination. And we can't have people Alt F4ing to disconnect and instantly save their caravan, because that will just be a horrible game experience. And I know people moving the caravans want to say and want to argue, but I want to save my stuff. Yeah, but I'm going to actually go with if you're going to Alt F4 to save your caravan, I'm gonna call you a cheater. You're using a game mechanic, an unintended game result, to save your caravan. Properly plan your caravan route and bring enough guards to defend it.
What are the benefits to choosing a religion to follow? Can you only follow one at a time, and how hard is it going to be to change a religion? So, first of all, yes, you may only choose one religion at a time to follow. Religions are unique in the sense that they have progression based off of quests that are uniquely offered to followers of that religion. Depending on your both performance in those quests as well as your number of quests completed, you will advance in rank within the religion. When you advance in rank within the religion, you will gain access to unique titles. You will gain access to unique shop items, and you will gain access to discounts as well as roles that will happen during either events for the node or sieges for the nodes that you're a citizen of, as long as it has a temple dedicated to the deity. You can change your religion as well. If you do change, you'll lose your progression within the religion. Also, the top tier achievement within religions is going to be gaining access to unique augments that can be stacked on top of your secondary archetype augments. Those have to do with more of a give and take type system based off of the choices that you have.
So a couple of things with this one. Number one, Stephen talks about augments on top of your augments. I need to find out if he meant, like, I have my secondary augment on my skill, and then I have an additional, like, oomph on it. So, for example, I'm a healer, and I'm a healer bard. So I've augmented with a bard ability. So my healer ability makes it a heal. My bard ability adds a hot to it. Does that mean I can add a religion augment on top of that and get another effect like a 5% shield or a 10% shield? Or did he mean on top of being, it adds to my pool of augments, so I have to pick that bard augment or that religious augment? So we need to get that one clarified. Another big thing here, guys, I know a lot of people are concerned, the no-lifing hardcore players that are going to play like 16 hours a day, and they're going to reach the top of their vertical progression. And then you're like, well, they're just going to be more powerful than me. I'm never going to be able to catch up. The thing is once I reach 50 and my vertical progression is capped, I have to start working on my horizontal progression. And there's nothing that says while you're working on your horizontal progression, you're also not getting that vertical progression. So a person who can only play a couple of hours a day or a couple of days a week, you might be able to multitask, reaching your level 50 vertical cap at the same time you're investing in your religions. Finally, the mayors are going to have a choice of what buildings they build on their constructible plots. I know a lot of people were concerned that certain guilds are going to take over certain nodes, or they're going to have a guild member get elected as mayor, and then although the mayor owns the node, the guild's going to drive that node a certain way. Keep in mind, they have to apply that temple, at least a temple, to a constructible site, or they're not going to have those benefits if their node gets sieged. So there are definitely risk versus reward and cost benefit things you're going to have to do in order to make sure you siege proof your node as much as possible.
Will base class clerics be the only players who have a direct healing spell for other players? If so, will there be any way to have other classes heal, such as a staff that has a healing skill tree? On the base class of clerics, they as well as bards will have direct healing effects. Bards will be much less, and the bards will have will be proximity based as opposed to direct target or otherwise. The clerics will also be able to heal base. We tested this a little bit. So in the Castle Siege testing that we did with Phoenix Initiative, we had action-based weapon skills that you could target, and I'm not sure which weapon it was. I think it was a scepter, that you could fire off heals in a direction, and that would hit your allies if you were grouped with them. We have not decided yet to implement that type of feature within the MMORPG. It was more on the action side testing action-based healing skills. But to answer your question, the base archetype cleric will be the predominant healing force class with some supplemental healing that would be more over time healing or proc-based healing based on the action of players that's assigned to the bard role. Oh, and one other component there is through the secondary class augment features, it will be possible for some base archetypes to augment their active skills that will grant either themselves the potential to heal or will have very mitigated healing for other party members also. And just to give context there, again, the purpose of secondary archetypes and the augment system is to blur the line a little bit with the class roles. So while we're following a traditional Trinity type system in class roles, we are utilizing the secondary augment system to allow players to move the dial a little bit in one direction with the augments.
So I'm really happy to hear that bards are going to have some healing. I always figured that they would, but since we didn't have a soundbite for it, I didn't want to take the position that they were going to have healing. The big part is people immediately in the Discord and immediately in my after stream, people said, well, now there's 2 healing classes. Pay attention to what Steven said. The bard is going to be a healer, but significantly less than the cleric. Does that mean you're going to be able to run dungeons without a cleric now? It's too soon to tell. I think you might be able to get away with a tank, sub-cleric, a bard, sub-cleric, and then everybody else do a damage dealer sub-cleric if everybody can generate enough self-sustain. However, at the same time, I think if Intrepid saw people powering through the dungeons like that, they would tweak the bard's healing. Intrepid really wants to be based on that Trinity system of a tank, a healer, and DPS. And now bards fit on the healer side because they're bard / support. So it's going to be interesting to see. I definitely would say the 2 healer concept per party in PvP is definitely going to be a thing, but you're not going to see people running 2 clerics. I definitely think you're going to see parties running 1 bard, 1 cleric, because they're going to want that direct healing and that area of effect healing plus all the other buffs that the bard's going to bring.
How will food consumption work in this game? As in, will they act as long-term buffs or something else? Food consumption will act in certain ways. So first of all, the higher quality the food based on the cooking profession that a player excels in, the greater potential for the buff's duration. In addition, you can increase the buff that food gives through the furniture system that can be placed in homes. So for example, if you have a completed dish and you process that dish inside of, let's say, an oven that has to be constructed and placed within a certain grade home, you can increase the effects as well. Another thing is buffs from food can be proximity based also. So for example, if a player chooses to construct a tavern or a business on their freehold, they can offer food through that tavern, excuse me, through that tavern, and players who are visiting the area doing hunting quests can visit the tavern, eat food if it's available, and they will receive a greater buff that is proximity based. Essentially, if they hunt around that person's business, they will receive the benefit of the buff. Additionally, that business can be upgraded through the access of additional blueprints, as well as resources that need to be then poured into the building. And if they do so, that proximity radius expands. So it kind of like it makes your business, more popular and more known and have greater abilities.
So this is just absolutely amazing. This is a key feature for me. I've been excited about taverns since they were first announced. I spend a lot of time helping new players, and it's one thing to be able to just PM people back and forth when they have questions, but to have the ability to set up an establishment where not only can they come and talk to somebody and get advice, they have somewhere that they feel like it's okay to be a new player, it's okay to be a noob, it's okay to be a casual, it's okay to be lost and confused. That's what my tavern's going to be. But the fact that I can put out buff food for players and they can come there, get that buff, operate in the tavern area, and have that benefit, especially if I can find a good spot in the world to put a tavern sort of near a dungeon so that player groups come through and they know that the Ashes 101 Tavern is there. And hopefully we have the reputation that they can pull in some new players and, maybe get some new guildies, like help flush out. So I'm really excited about building a tangible location that gives benefits and you can kind of reward people and just help boost them along. So that is definitely a huge thing in my book, and I'm really excited that Ashes is doing that.
What is the team's vision on the scarcity of resources for gatherers? Will these be one-time use resource nodes that are only tapped by the first player there, or will they be shared cooldowns on resource nodes? So the idea behind the resource system is a few different applications here. First of all, yes, there will be some resources that are one-time gatherables and then will randomly spawn at a different location. However, there are also large vein gatherables, and this essentially is a system where a resource node will have multiple access to gathering from it. It will have a finite number, and this will likely attract a lot of players to kind of come and access that resource node. So like a large mine that's present and has a vein of mithril ore in it, or a herd of some type of animal that you can collect fur or wool from. Those will be then depleted and they will randomly spawn elsewhere. On the scarcity side, obviously there are going to be different tiers of gatherable resources that are higher end and will be more scarce and will require higher end tools in order to harvest. Also, you can, based off of your advancement within the gathering tree, will provide you a greater opportunity to proc more rare types of resources.
So going to be honest, I live my life in most MMORPGs as a gatherer. I find it very relaxing. I like to be, if I'm having an insomnia fit, I like to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning and just chop trees or mine ore. I liked in EVE Online the scarcity of resources. You couldn't get the bottom 4 ores in high sec. At a minimum, you had to go to low sec or null sec to find them in quantity. I thought that added a really good dynamic to the game. I love the idea that you're not going to be on a gathering route. World of Warcraft, Final Fantasy XIV, Arcade, you literally have your route of respawning nodes and you just circle around. Some games have tried to pull that apart and make that route different. I know Final Fantasy XIV made it in the further expansion packs that there's not 4 nodes right on top of each other, but you still have memorized where the 8 nodes are and you just have to travel between them. I love the fact that you could be on one side of the world in Ashes and literally mine out the ore or mine out the iron ore. You deplete out a big iron vein, and then you're not going to be able to sustain yourself on random spawning iron ore nodes spots around the world. So you're going to have to send your gatherers out further and further away from your node, your base of operation. I think that's amazing. I think that a lot of people were concerned that the caravan system wasn't going to be enough, or there weren't going to be enough caravans rolling around the world. I definitely think the scarcity of resources is going to matter. People that want to play the economy, people that want to be gatherers, caravan runners, merchant ship runners, if merchant ships end up coming in at launch. If not, they are an idea of Steven's. Kind of poke him about that, ask him about merchant ships. So yes, I definitely think all of the different systems Intrepid is trying to put together, they're all going to work, and we're going to get a good experience from that.
One of the issues a guild of our size has experienced during various launches has been server lockouts, where a server population reaches critical and a decision is made to lock the server, essentially forcing a separation of the guild. While we understand the overwhelming loads that launches place on server infrastructure can't be predicted, at the very least, if there is a contingency plan to separate the population, will this be communicated well in advance so guilds can plan ahead? And will there be a server transfer system in place to help address this issue? One of the things that I would like to introduce that is going to be rolled out probably during the beta phases is allowing server reservations. And essentially, this provides an opportunity for players who are parts of guilds to reserve their spots on the server. I think that will help to mitigate the differences.
Okay, so I cut Steven off mid-thought there because he goes on and talks about a lot of other things there. The big one there is 2 parts. Number one, a lot of people don't believe that Intrepid Studios is doing community-driven development. I'm not the only person who's brought this up, but Star Wars The Old Republic had the exact system Steven's talking about there. In a lot of games I've played, in fact, in Arc Age Unchained, the reason why I gave up on Arc Age Unchained, among all the other issues the game was having, I got server separated from my guild, and that took my hype down from 100 to like 40 right away. They literally said we're not going to lock servers, and then they did. So I couldn't get with my new guild. Star Wars The Old Republic, they set it up so your guild was all together on a server because they gave you weeks to sign up to your guild, and then you didn't pick the server in Star Wars The Old Republic. You signed up for your guild, and then they sort of peanut butter spread out the guilds. And hopefully, as Steven gets feedback on this, hopefully they decide to put guilds on servers that want to fight each other. Like, I think that should be an option. It should say, what server do you want to be on? Like, maybe I have a bunch of haters who want to be like, I want to be on whatever server Jahlon and his Paradox guild is on. And that would be fair. That would be a fair thing for them to do. I think that'll help them spread server 1 out a bit. I know a lot of people want to be on server 1, the PvP server. I know a lot of people don't want to be anywhere near server 1. I think a lot of people want to be away from the big streamers, and that's a fair thing as well. But the fact Steven said they want to keep guilds together is really going to help make sure, as a guild leader, I'm not having to sort of come up with a plan to get people on the server later, develop extra resources for them to hand them when they get there. Because it is going to suck if there are no server transfers, and we don't want server transfers. Those just break games. So you're basically telling a person they can't play for like 30 days because they have to wait for your server to unlock. So kudos to Intrepid for doing this.
I heard that the character creation should be on the level video character creation. Will it have all of that or more options, such as sliders? The goal is to have a character creator on par, if not much better than what BDO provided. I really give a hats off to their developers in making that character creator. They did a great job. Oh, one other thing about that. I really would love to give out early our character creator, and some games have done this as well. Give the character creator out early so that players can spend time making and customizing their character and then saving that character profile so that they're ready to go on day one.
So again, when it comes to process improvement, and that's a big thing for me, companies shouldn't be trying to reinvent the wheel. If something another company did worked well, just benchmark it. It's not called stealing, it's called benchmarking. Acknowledge that you're benchmarking their idea, and you can't really copyright an idea. Final Fantasy XIV did just this. Part of their benchmark, their graphics benchmarking, their computer benchmarking to make sure you could run the game, included the character creator. And you could download the character creator suite like months in advance. And that gave people the ability to make their character, save the image, and then when launch day came, we had a soft rolling start on launch day, but when the soft day came, all it was literally was make a new character, load this template, hit start. It meant that people who care about what their character looks like were able to spend hours. I think I spent 3 hours making my Lalafell in Final Fantasy XIV. So with that said, if Intrepid can manage to pull this off, it's going to be great for the players. It's also going to be an amazing marketing tool. Can you imagine a game that's 3 months out giving you the character creator early so that you can get in there and start playing with it? Little boxes with little bits of teaser lore there, like the little backstory. You show some backgrounds. You could even go so far as you could add like a small house apartment in Freehold like demo in the character creator. That would be a brilliant marketing tool, and I would love to see them do it.
About the inventory system, how limited will it be, and will there be ways to enhance the capacity? Also, what advantages does sending a caravan get over just coordinating a bunch of people to fill their inventories with materials and run to the goal? Well, okay, let's answer the first one. The initial capacity will be relatively limited. However, there will be specific items that can be achieved within the game based off of the progression of the node system, as well as certain quest lines that can be utilized to grant inventory slot expansions. The quest items will not fill your non-quest item capacity.
So again, this is another brilliant thing. There are games that put your quest items on a separate tab than your normal inventory. If you've seen me playing Guild Wars 2, I absolutely end up with pointless stuff. I start doing an event, I wander off, I don't turn the items in. So I love the fact that they're doing this. I also know that people are concerned about the gatherers and the gathering and the craftables quantity in the backpack. And again, this is that all the systems are tied together. You are not going to go out into the world and mine for 5 hours and have 50,000 iron ore in your backpack. Number one, you're not going to find 50,000 iron ore to mine. And number two, you have a fixed quantity of gatherable space in your bag. If you want to do more than that, you're going to have to pull out a mule. And then the fact you have a mule out in the world is going to result in people corrupted seeing a loot pinata. And some people have said, well, I don't want to be attacked when I'm gathering. Well, it's an open world PvP game, so yeah, you might get attacked. You're just going to have to accept that. I know people have said, well, it seems punishing for the gatherers. Let's wait until we can actually test to see how big our bag is, and then we can give feedback. But definitely, Steven wants the feedback, so let's just wait till we're there, and we can give him all the feedback we have.
Is there a chance that the monthly subscription fee will be adjusted to other countries? That's pretty standard in the industry when it comes to essentially a part of the localization process and distribution process in foreign territories to harmonize the price for those territories. That is something that we will be doing with Ashes of Creation. With regards to the subscription fee specifically. However, it's important to note that price harmonization will only occur when the servers are segregated from different territory servers. So for example, a Brazilian player, if they were a subscription based, they would have to pay that harmony price for the Brazilian servers. Same with regards to other potential
So big one here. I know a lot of South American players were saying they can't play Ashes because they can't afford the $15 a month. I'm glad Intrepid has finally said something about it. I do want to just point out the big takeaway from that, though. Intrepid is not planning on region locking their servers. However, they are going to region lock your price adjusted servers. So if you want to pay the Brazilian adjusted price for the game, you're going to be locked to a Brazilian region, and then you're only going to be able to play on those servers. That doesn't mean you can't port your account to one of the other regions. It just means you would port your account when you were out of subscription time, or you'd end up forfeiting that subscription time. You're not going to be a North American player, port your account down to Brazil, load up on 3 years of subscription time, and then come back to North America. Intrepid's not going to allow that. Also, I understand some Brazilian players like to play with their North American guilds, their North American friends. You can do that. You're just going to be paying the North American price. So I know some people heard that and they're like, well, you said no region locking. They aren't region locking you. You are not going to be IP locked where you have to play in your region. You are going to be able to put your account in any region. However, you will be paying that region's price.
Who gets the drop from world bosses? So essentially, when a raid is formed, the leader of the raid that is in charge or formed the raid has the opportunity to set loot distribution settings. And that can be a wide variety of available options, including specific loot master. And essentially, they're going to determine how that works. Now, if you have two competing raids, that's going to be done essentially off of a tag and DPS system. So tagging the target will grant a slight benefit to DPS done, and then a DPS against the target is going to determine the looting rights, so to speak. So for example, if you tag the target, you may only need to do 40% of the damage done, or some plurality thereof, to achieve looting rights. If you don't tag the target, you may need to do 60% of the damage done in order to do that. Now,
so it's pretty clear Steven was an Arcage player with this system. He's played a lot of games, but Arcage was a horribly implemented system at first. You could tag a world boss and do 1% of the damage and you could get the loot. XL Studios eventually changed it where if you did more than a percentage of the damage, you were eligible for the loot. And then it finally became, if you did more percentage of the damage, your raid got the loot. I know a lot of people keep asking, what about the loot? What about the loot drops? What about ninja looters? What about loot thieves? What about party leaders changing it at the last minute? All of that stuff is going to get worked out in the wash. There are a lot of different ways, a lot of different things they want to test. Big thing is, as I've said a couple of times, when we get those systems, be providing the feedback. And like I tell the Paradox Gaming Network people, good feedback isn't this sucks. Good feedback is this sucks because. Better feedback is I don't like this because, and detail out reasons. Also, always do the oppositional part of your argument. If you really want your feedback to be taken seriously, make sure you acknowledge both the opposition and your position. That way you can say, I understand the other side of the argument is, and it really makes your feedback look way more balanced.
You want travel to matter, but you also mentioned that you'll have a family fast travel system. Doesn't traveling matter go out the window when players set up family links with their guild? So again, families are, let me read the last part of that. What system will be in place to prevent this? Yes. So it's important to note that there's a cooldown period between a person leaving a family and joining another family, and that period is in the matter of days. That's the first thing. Second of all, the summon system is contained wholly within the family unit. So for example, if I have a family size that's possible of 8 members, the same as a party size, and I want to summon one of them and they summon the others, right? My party can, make it to dungeons and PvE content relatively quickly, but I won't be able to then summon someone else in the guild who's a part of another family, right? So they'll have to either have a representative that's present there as well.
All right. So this one's a spicy controversial topic. Is it possible that hardcore guilds will have their families set up so that the entire guild is structured into 38 families so they can do very dedicated teleport pulls where I pull number 2 pulls number 3, and all the way down the chain to number 8? Yes, there will be guilds that do this. There are a couple of problems. Number 1, 38 people would have to make the trip to the destination. So if you're going to try to, hot drop somebody, Eve term, if you're going to try to hot drop somebody, you're going to have to move 38 people discreetly to an ambush location. That's a lot of people. That's almost a raid's worth of people. So you might have been better off taking the raid's worth of people to begin with. Number 2, you're assuming 100% of your guild is online all the time so that you can pull them. Now, I know some people are going to say, well, it doesn't have to be 100% of the guild all the time. That's true. You might pull 200 people, and that's still a lot. Number 3, keep in mind, and this was an EVE Online flaw, even if you travel 140 kilometers across the map, you're still going to have to invest the time to traverse all the way back to your base of operations. I know a lot of people think this is going to be exploited. They could very easily put the teleport on a 6-hour cooldown. The purpose is to make sure that your family members can catch up to you every night because the world is big. So I'm retired. I decide at 2 o'clock I'm going to travel to a node halfway across the map. My family members don't get on until 6 o'clock. Well, I pull them at 6 o'clock so they can join me. But like I said, they're still going to have to traverse back, and that's going to be eating up a lot of real world time. I know somebody brought up the point in my live stream. Well, what about a guild leader who has a flying dragon or a metro mayor who has a flying dragon can travel across the world and then pull people? They could, but they can only pull the 8 members of their family. It's not like people can drop out of their family, join a new family, and pull. Steven said the cooldown for family swapping is days. So, again, this is one of those, it sounds controversial. Let's wait till we have it, and then let's test it and tear it apart.
Does the philosophy behind Necromancy class match this going into Ashes of Creation? More importantly than anything else, are the zombies, skeletons, etc. going to be permanent? Okay, so first of all, the way that summoning works is players have active abilities as a summoner to summon a particular type of summon. And those types of summons that you can summon will be adherent to the Trinity class system. So you will have a more tank-oriented type summon available to you, as well as a more support-oriented type summon and a DPS type summon. So you kind of want to choose which one you're going to use at any given encounter based on the necessity of the encounter. As you apply the Cleric secondary class and have available to your summon class active skills the augment of life or death, you're going to radically change the type of summon that you can have for each of those roles. And that's going to take on, obviously, the subtype undead. So skeletons, zombies, and a more different horror type undead. Are the summons permanent? So when you make the summon, it is not timed. It will exist until it dies, or you log off, or you summon a different creature. And then your abilities as a summoner are really going to go to either, you can kind of choose this based off of your skill point allocation, either to augment through buffing and healing your summon specifically, and granting it certain types of abilities that are temporary based off the skill cast, or you will have more complementary type active skills that you can cast on the target and will synergize with the summons abilities as well. And your decision as a summoner to allocate skill points will be, obviously your choice. But that's to give more information on the Necromancer's side.
So this wasn't necessarily new information, but since there is so little information about the summoners out there, I decided to include the whole clip. We don't know much about summoners in Bards. We can pretty much guesstimate a lot on fighters and rogues. We have a fair bit on rangers, mages, clerics, and tanks because we saw those in Alpha Zero. We've gotten a lot of information about those. So I did include all of that. Keep in mind that while he's talking about necromancers in that specific example, that's really for the entire summoner class, because all summoners are going to work the same because they're all the same base primary archetype, and your secondary archetype, which forms your class, is going to provide you your augments, and then in the case of summoners, the minions, the necromancer's minions are going to look like traditional necromancer, minions. The sub ranger, probably animals. So there's gonna be a familiarity that you already have, even though you haven't been exposed to it yet.
Will shipbuilding be available for coastal freeholds? No, not for freeholds. So shipbuilding is a part of the craft branch of the artisanship, which means that the ability to shipbuild as a profession is housed within the development of nodes, right? So those crafting stations come online the higher you go. Now, nodes that are coastal will have a hook to harbor systems that exist on the coast. So the node may not be on the coast, but it's going to be near the coast. And when it advances, it's going to spawn assets along the coast. That's the harbor crafting areas. And also have hooks for quests and whatnot. That harbor station will have the craftable stations for shipbuilders to go and utilize blueprints to construct different classes of ships. Now, the higher the node becomes, the access they have to construct specific types of shipbuilding stations, and players will then be given access, the shipbuilding crafters will then be given access to construct higher type class of ships. And to be clear, You will not need to be a shipbuilder profession to construct ships. The shipbuilder profession, particularly, they have the ability to craft components of the ships, which increases the ship's capabilities, defenses, speeds, turn rate, offense and defense, all those types of things. And then they can sell those to other players just as you would any profession.
So I have to say that the naval system planned for Ashes of Creation is another one of the big things I'm looking forward to. Steven played Arcage. I played Arcage. I have a fairly nice boat on Arcage. Well, I had a fairly nice boat, but for the time I was playing. I love the fact that I'm going to be able to outfit a ship without RNG. That was a big flaw in Arcage's process. It was all based on RNG. The fact that they're planning a robust naval system is great. A couple of tidbits on that. Remember, if your caravan traverses over water, it will stop at the shore, it will transition to a boat, and then it will be on the water. Also remember, there may be merchant ships. Again, poke Steven about merchant ships. He leaked them to me, but I really want him to talk about them to the public. You're going to have different size boats for different size groups. So there are going to be boats for 1 to 3 person crews. There's going to be boats for 8-person crews and then 40-person crews. You're going to have a sailoring side tree, just like another one of those horizontal progressions. So you might be a really good captain, navigator. You might be really good at working the rigging. You might be really good at repairing. Also, finally, anybody who played Arcage and you know the annoyance of the ships being on a 4-minute cooldown for repair, you cannot summon a boat out in the water. If your boat is destroyed and you don't bring multiple boats for your group, you have to swim to either, at the very least, the closest shoreline, but potentially maybe as far as the closest port to summon your boat. So this isn't going to be Arcage where people are pulling pocket boats out and you're just constantly fighting the same boats over and over. Also, the ship-to-ship combat is going to matter. There will be boarding of the ships, but Steven wants to focus on the ship combat being relevant, not the fastest way to take over a boat is just swarm over and kill everybody on board. So all those things combined, really, really stoked for the naval content in Ashes of Creation. And that is it for today, guys. I know the video was long. I wanted to give like the full clips of the stuff I wanted to talk about. If you want to know more about Ashes of Creation, right across there, Ashes 101, it's the website I'm working on. If you find any typos, just PM me. I realize I got to do a full scrub on the website. Also, if you guys have not made your account for Ashes of Creation yet, I do not know what you're waiting for. In the description below, there's a referral link. I'd appreciate it if you use that. It helps me out paying for stuff like the web hosting. Also, I'm going to be doing gift card giveaways for game time when the game goes live. And until then, guys, I'm going to be gone for the next 10 days. This is July 26th. So I'm going to be gone for about 10 days on vacation. So I know it's right in the middle of the media hype, but hopefully Ashes 101 has enough to keep you satisfied. And then when I'm back, I'll be doing more live streams. I've got up there in the corner, there's a card for the playlist of all the live stream Q&As I've done. So there's more than enough information to keep you busy for the 10 days I'm gone. You guys stay safe this summer with everything going on, and I will talk to you next time. What are you still doing here? Nobody ever stays this long. This is the end screen. Well, since you're here, there's a couple other videos I think you should check out. And all those names, those are my patrons over at Patreon. I couldn't do this without them. So, big thanks to them for all their support.